I am trying to make an actual TV show.
It's so hard to find a funny show that isn't filthy. I watch them, but I don't want to.
Let's do this.
Fire, like lots of fire.
So dedicated.
So cool. Where's it go from there, you know?
Oh, have I got your attention now?
This is bigger than you can handle.
Got any plans for tonight?
What are you waiting for? Let's go.
Cool? Absolutely!
It's still the afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing out there? Oh, come on, we gotta do a little better than that. How you doing out there? There we go. I'm Randy Kleiner. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SeriesFest, and welcome to today. This is our final regular program. I know. I'm getting very sad. It's been a tremendous 5 days. I've seen so many of you. Is there anybody that this is their first program they're attending? Well, welcome. It's so nice to see so many returning faces day in and day out. I thank you for spending these incredible 5 days with us. And I know that we're about to close on a high, so I feel very good about that. Very quickly, thank you to the incredible SeriesFest staff and our over 150 volunteers. They make this festival look good, feel good, and good. So thank you to the staff and volunteers. And thank you to our friends at Denver Film. We're in their home, the C Film Center. Their staff, from the projectionists to the house managers, theater managers, box office concessions, et cetera, all work and become part of our family for the next for these 5 days. So huge thank you to Denver Film. I am so honored to get to introduce our next guest in this next program that we're about to do. So with our innovation talks, they're kind of our version of keynotes. They're more one-on-one fireside chats, and we're really looking for the movers and the shakers. And we've got one, and we've got a few here that are just incredible. I'm gonna work backwards a little bit here. I want to talk about we're here obviously for the innovation talk with Daymond John and Emil Pinnock. I want to talk about Emil for a quick second. Emil's an independent creator that brought a series here back in 2017 that won 4 awards, including Best Pilot and Best Audience Award. And Emil's become such a big part of our family, and you'll hear more about his story and his incredible journey. And it was because of him and his relationship with Mr. Daymond John that we were able to put this together. So just a huge thank you to Emil, and he's gonna come up and talk in a little bit too. But on to the main event here. You've seen him on ABC's 5-time Emmy Award-winning television series Shark Tank. He is the presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship, appointed by the Obama administration and known around the world as the People's Shark. He's a New York Times bestselling author who has written 6 books, including his first book for kids and latest New York Times bestseller, Little Daymond Learns to Earn, in 2023. How great is that title? Come on. To empower the next generation with financial literacy. He's the founder and CEO of FUBU, a global fashion brand which has amassed billions of dollars in retail sales to date. Real Leaders magazine has named him one of the top 20 public speakers in the world. You guys, in the world, and he's here with us today. Before we get started here, I just would love to bring out our incredible moderator. Thank you so much for her doing this. Please welcome Doni Aldine, the CEO of Cultures, Global Multicultural Lifestyle Media. Doni, welcome. And I'm going to hand you this, but first we're going to watch a little clip about Daymond.
So please, if you'd give a warm SeriesFest welcome to Daymond John.
Thank you.
A pleasure to have you, Daymond. You know, what we just discovered a few minutes ago, both of us are Trinidadian.
Yes.
This is important.
Very
important. So what's interesting about that is that can you hear me? Thank you. Okay. What's interesting about that is Trinidadians are inherent storytellers. And here at SeriesFest, it's all about the story. So as we know, Mr. John is an entrepreneur, but storytelling is also important in entrepreneurship. So you've inspired millions of people around the world. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected that storytellers are part of that group. Why do you think that your journey is an inspiration to those who are creators and tell stories?
Oh, it's all about the story. I can break it down in the simplest form as an infomercial. Isn't that a story? You know, when you think about somebody creating companies, it's pretty much you have to ask yourself 3 questions. Why me, why now, and why this? You know, I'm a very simple guy, right? An infomercial has to be able to tell you a story in such a short period of time. And what they have to tell you is that, can you take that light off your phone? You can keep recording, but it's just, get that little, an infomercial in a very short period of time lets you either realize that you have a problem that everybody else has, or introduces you to a new problem that you didn't know existed. It then tells why the person is qualified to solve that problem. And then it tells you a story about how if magically that number that's going to be there forever, if magically you call it by 12 o'clock tonight, you're going to get 2 solutions to your problems. But it understands that you have to invest and you have to break that habit. So it's going to tell you the story on how they're going to make it as easy as possible. I mean, think about an infomercial. Hey, have you been doing this and you said to yourself, there's got to be a better way? Well, I'm Daymond John, and I've been having the same problem for 10 years, and I've tried 100 better ways, but I couldn't find a better way until today. I found a better way. And if you want to be part of that better way, by midnight tonight, I'm going to give you 3 better ways for the price of 1. And if you don't like those better ways, I promise I'm going to give you your money back. And so it's a story, right? FUBU was the same story. We were being neglected by the people that we were buying our clothes from because there was a new technology coming out at the time called hip-hop. The technology at that time was a disruptive technology because at that time there was no internet, there was no social media. We didn't see what was going on in the streets of Denver or Compton or Trinidad or Japan. We didn't see that on the 6 o'clock news. But now a new generation did not have to play an instrument or harmonize, and they were communicating through this music about their hopes, their dreams, their love, their aspirations, political issues, police violence, and things they wanted to aspire to. They were storytellers, and that's how we were getting our information, right, about what was going on. So we realized the kids of any color had the same plights in any other country. I always say hip-hop and country music are the same exact thing. It will always be the most dominating music because it's the have-nots, and there's no difference. You know, what is country music? My dog died. Hip-hop music is, where's my dog at? Where my dog's at, right? Snoop Doggy Dog or whatever it is. So, but that was storytelling, and it came with a way to walk, talk, and dress. And when we started buying clothes from people that we were reinterpreting for the streets, they were taking our money, going, "We don't like you." And that was a different form of storytelling. And so that's what FUBU came out with, was a story. We had empathy for our customer. If Ralph Lauren said, "I don't like you because I made a pair of 32s and you're supposed and you're wearing it as a 36," he didn't have empathy for the community, because that kid wearing a 36 could have said, "Well, I'm breakdancing and I want it to be loose." That kid could have said, "I don't have any money, it came from my older brother." That kid could have said, "I had $75, I don't think I'd ever be able to afford your jeans, so I bought it 2 sizes or 3 sizes bigger." That kid could have said, "I just thought I was supposed to wear it like that because in the Northeast, when you're incarcerated, or in many places when you're incarcerated, you can't have belts or any kind of strings because you don't want anybody hanging themselves." So the cool people in the community that we looked up to as 5 probably came home from jail, and that's a habit that we inherited. So it's all about storytelling.
I absolutely love that. So what would you say? Do you think there's a formula? I know in journalism, people don't expect there to be, but there's a formula to how you write a story, and then you instill the emotion in the heart. Do you think there's a formula to the stories that you tell?
Well, it's kind of like what I just said about the formula of qualifying why there is a problem, then all of a sudden why you're the one who can answer the problem and why there's a solution. But as we get into it, that's why I love to work with storytellers, because there's a different language. We'll talk about Emil, and we obviously all know Emil here. For all the storytellers in this room, I'll say we all speak a different language. I'm a manufacturer. If I said to you something to the nature of, if you said, "Hey, I want to buy some shirts, get some shirts made," I can tell if you've been in the manufacturing business or not. A lot of people come on Shark Tank, "Oh, I've been doing this and that." Is that right? Okay. And they tell me a story. I go, "Okay. This person hasn't been in the business long." It's just like me. I'll go, "Well, what's the plot?" To one of the storytellers in the room. They're like, "Wait, it just doesn't start like that, homie." I remember I was doing my first book, and I said to my writer, my ghostwriter, I just did a statement. He said, "You can't just make a statement like that. I got to lead up to it. Now you got people wondering. I got to do this, this, and that." So in my business, if I told you I was going to make a shirt, I would say, "Listen, or some goods." I would say, "I'm ordering 40 pounds of great goods. I hope that they don't crock, and most of the usage of them I'm going to use for different pieces, but I need to know what it is FOB and what it is LDP when it gets here, and is it going to go to a DC center, and how many doors is it going to go into?" You're probably going to say, "What the hell are you talking about?" What did I say was, I'm buying 40 pounds of gray goods. We dye the goods. I want the colors to come from certain places like Japan, and the ink from Japan and China, because they got from India. When you call it bleeding, we call it crocking. What's FOB? It's how much the cost is first on the boat before I pay any taxes and tariffs and whatever the case is. What is LDP? Landed, duty, paid. Where does it go? If it goes to Target or something else, it goes to a DC center that sends it out to as many doors, 400 stores, 700 stores, 900 stores. There's a conversation over here on that, right? There's a structure to how I deal with it. It's a structure in storytelling that I learned from people like Emil and the people in this room who show me how to tell a story so I can do what I do best.
I love how you perfectly told a story of how to tell the story.
Yeah.
So you talk about the brand. So let's talk about brand storytelling a little bit. And FUBU, FUBU.
Yep.
Okay. Was that the original name? How did you come up with it? And was that the original?
No. The original name was Bufu.
And how did you come up with that?
it was the same concept, right? BUFU, by us, for us, right? I found in my neighborhood that name was something that meant something totally different. So I changed it around to FUBU, for us, by us. Now, a lot of people would think that I created it out of a color, too, and I had to change the narrative in the story. It was not a color, because then I would have been guilty of the same people that I created. And a lot of people don't know my stepfather, who came into my life when I was 16 years old, happened to be the Jewish faith. And his brother was the lead attorney over here fighting for Mandela's freedom from the American side. And he always told me two things. He said, "Son, always be pro-black, never anti-anything else, and never become the thing you're fighting against." And so when I created FUBU out of the, true, give it up.
You can clap for that.
Absolutely.
That
I mean, 95% of this country, we have the same in common. Don't let these 5% of these assholes rip us apart. Now, so it was derived off of an primarily African American music that started in the Bronx. But I wanted it to be for everybody. And I had to change that narrative, because I remember one day when we had gotten really big. And I gave FUBU to all of the people in my company, like 400 people, for holiday. I said, "Hey, take it home, all FUBU kids." And a good portion of them brought it back and said, "My son and daughter can't wear it, and I need to bring it back. I don't want to waste any clothes." I said, "Why?" He said, "They got beat up at school because they were white." And I realized I became the thing I was fighting against. And I had to be very intentional about the story. And I started addressing the instincts of the world and all those of the world, and said, we have a beautiful art that is created out of, and don't get me wrong, I was dressing MC Serge, I was dressing the Beastie Boys, who were the craziest rappers you ever saw, right? But I had to be more intentional about the messaging to make people understand that I was trying to create an amazing culture. It would end up going on, and even like now, it's one of the biggest brands in the Philippines. But in Japan, I mean, in Korea, it's a totally other brand. It's a full skateboard brand. So it started to create its own identity, and that FUBU was that FUBU for them.
So tell us a little bit about the journey. You know, entrepreneurship is very much like being a creator, being a filmmaker. Often you have an idea, you have a spark, you have a message you want to put out into the world, and you may not have the capital to do so. So I believe that's the way you started on your entrepreneurial journey as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, I take my hat off to creatives and storytellers, because I can clearly create something and know where my price point is. You want to buy that shirt? That's $40. No. It's $30. No. $20. Maybe. You know, it's very hard because everybody has an opinion about your story and how you're telling your story. You know, I have a very clear thing. Now, of course, when it gets to legal and all those kind of things, you have your whatever the case is. So I always find it fascinating how the storytellers in the room are able to do that. Now, the good thing, though, about that part is it's a little easier to know if your story resonates. Pretty simple, especially today. You can put it out in 30 seconds, 50 seconds, whatever the case is. I can't make something that quick and have you buy it, right? You see, because I always say in my business, when we make material products and various other things, everybody's going to tell you your baby's beautiful, right?
I don't know. Not all babies are beautiful. I'm just saying.
That's true, but you know, like, let's say if you made, I always say, sell your shirt to a person who doesn't owe you. You give it to Nana, you know what she's going to say. Oh boy, when I went to work, baby, everybody loved this Gordon Guttrell. You know, you should make more. Nana loves you. You know, but sell it to somebody who doesn't care about you. You know, wait, I got my analytics, my best analytics. I didn't have social media. I just stood outside the Apollo Theater at midnight trying to sell my shirts when that Showtime at the Apollo let out in Harlem in 125th Street. They told me what they thought about my shirts and my mother. So if I sold goods, I knew I was good. When you have content and you tell compelling stories, or even in obviously short clips and various other things, you can see who's viewing, who's talking about it very, very quickly. And I'm not saying that the creative process didn't take forever. So to be able to qualify it, it can happen quicker. But to be able to scale it takes much longer, you know?
So unlike a filmmaker, you were able to stand outside the Apollo, sell your wares, and make money that way and then grow. But for the people who need funding to get started, and not everybody does. I mean, we know the stories of people who, you know, now sometimes do things on their iPhone, whatever the case may be. But how do they scale? How do they find that capital to build and grow like you did with your business?
Well, who needs you? You know, we know what OPM is. But OPM, for me, has always been other people's mind power, manpower, manufacturing, marketing, mentors, mistakes. Bartering and trading, the ability to tell a story is the way to do it. If you're thinking purely physical cash, well, then you're competing with cash. That's the hardest way to succeed. You know, bartering and trading today is the most undervalued asset that anybody has. It's either done with people on a lower level, where I'll give you a rusty knife for a leg of lamb, or it's done with, I'm going to give you 1,000 tanks for 1 billion barrels of oil. Richard Branson started Virgin Airlines with bartering. Mickey Arison started Carnival Cruise Line with bartering and trading. So how do you barter and trade? How do you go and say, you have this and I'm going to tell this, I'll help you tell a story for this, but I need this. And, you know, there's a little book called The Art of Barter. It's not really a huge book. I told Emil about it, and he's been just off and running ever since then. But I'll give you an example. I had a woman probably about 2 years ago. She was a Spanish teacher. She said, I'm not making enough money as a Spanish teacher. I need a car. And I said, well, okay. I said, why don't you go down to your local dealer and say, hey, for 3 hours every single weekend, I will teach Spanish to your best customers or even your community. You always have 6 or 7 dealer cars with dealer plates on them. Why don't you just give me a car that I'll rent or borrow a car? I'll only put only 1,000 miles on the car, right? And in return, your customer's going to drop off kids. They're going to have kids that are going to speak Spanish. So she did it for 1 dealer. Now she does it for 7 dealers. She gets booked by the parents for other alternative things. So she has like 10 other clients, and she has 7 cars that she drives around that she doesn't have to pay for. She doesn't have to have insurance, and they're brand new. It's bartering and trading. That's what we call remnant time, you know? A hotel, if a hotel has 300 rooms and they know at 12:01 they're only out of 100 rooms, well, why do you think it goes on Hotels Tonight? They're not going to just 200 people going to walk in there. Barter and trade to tell a story for that hotel to get discount rooms on remnant time days. They're to start your business, right? There's so many ways to barter and trade. Radio station, billboards, everybody. You see, the beauty of where we are today is a lot of people that have the funds and the fundamental of the business, they're 30, 40, 50. And the ones who are creating a lot of change are working very quickly. They're young. So you have people who don't know how to communicate as well or as fast, and you have kids or people, not even kids too, who don't have funding. When you broker that gap with the talent you have, somebody needs you. You know, I got a deal. I didn't get a deal from Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, Louis Vuitton. I got a deal from Samsung's textile division. Anybody know that Samsung had a textile division? I never went to number 1. I never went to number 1, 2, and 3. I went to number 200, who wanted to be number 1, 2, and 3. I just kept kissing another frog and kissing. I'm not telling people in here anything new. I mean, people who are creatives and storytellers, they're kissing frogs all day. But I kissed a whole lot of frogs. I was like my friend from the hood who said, man, I go ugly early when I go to the club. You know, so you got to find somebody who will eventually need you. You didn't think you were going to hear that one, right? Same dude who used to say, you know, what did he say? A 2 at 10 is a 10 at 2. Yeah. You know.
Well, I love the creativity in that. I think a lot of people miss that entrepreneurship and business has a lot of creativity, just like filmmaking, storytelling. So I think the gap that might be missing for some, I love how you told the bartering story. However, how did you get so creative? There's a lot of people, I'm sure, sitting here thinking, gosh, I wouldn't have thought of that. What can I bring? What do I do? Are there steps to build that creativity?
Yeah. What do I do in the regards to finding those opportunities?
Yes.
I think you and I, when we were backstage, I was just telling you the story. I was saying, you know, a lot of people ask me about, do you teach entrepreneurship to kids? How do you do it? And I was talking about, I was walking the beach yesterday, and I picked up some trash. Mm-hmm. And immediately I put it on social media. Hey, you know what? You know how many people call me with, oh, now you saving the planet. You jet-setting, meat-eating, champagne drinking. Now you saving the planet, huh, homie? And it is true. But I remember, you know, as I was growing up, if I picked up that piece of trash, we have 2 type of parents or 2 type of people around us. Somebody would say, what are you doing? You can never save the planet. You know how much garbage is out there. Another person like my mother would say, what did you get out of that? I don't know. I don't know. Do you think you're going to save the planet? I don't know. Did you get joy? Yeah. Did that 1 piece add to 4 pieces, add to 7 pieces? Yeah. Keep doing it. And so that's the difference of entrepreneurship. You know, an entrepreneur is, or a storyteller is somebody who's optimistic. Mm-hmm. You just have to add to that, how can I add value? So when you're listening, when you're talking to the buyer or who the person is, where is the value? You know, perfect example, guys come on a show called Bombas Socks. They're doing $800,000 a year. This is 2008. I got on the show in 2008 because I had 10 clothing brands, 8 of them were dead. Nobody wants to buy a shirt when they can't pay their mortgage. The last thing I want to buy is a company is a pair of socks, right? I already got 1 million socks in my warehouse, FUBU socks, and the only way that I sell those, I sneak into everybody's bathroom or their laundry room here, and I steal one out of the basket, and now you got to go buy another pair of socks.
That is where the socks are going.
That's where it's at. The last thing I want is socks. But you know what? They studied the target. I'm the target. They realized I used to always think that I had to make it, then I had to be able to master it, then I can matter. They realized that at the same time they can show me, Daymond, you don't need to be dependent on stores. We're going to show you how this new stuff is coming around, the Shopify and all this, sell directly. We're going to show you how to give to those at the same time, because prior to the internet, I gave millions of dollars away, but I never want to highlight it because it looked like I'm making a profit off the people's pain. They're the #1 company in Shark Tank history, going to do $1.5 billion this year. They knew how to wag the dog. The buyer often doesn't know what they want until it walks in the room.
Wow. So, okay, bartering. I think that's next level. And your fellow shark often says, let's talk about money. Money.
Would that be Kevin, you mean?
Kevin.
Yeah.
Let's talk about money.
The money.
So I know people in this room are definitely looking for funding for their projects, and we just discussed that's not necessarily the best way. So I hope you were able to really decipher and think through creatively, how can you barter your services to get the things that you need? And for those who are looking for money, looking for capital, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of where do they look for it? How do they find the perfect partner? And then once they get that partner, how do they pitch properly?
Well, the first thing about it is, who should you not pitch, right? So now you want to get everything out of the way. If you're pitching a company or a fund, that has a certain criteria, understand their criteria. We want to put in this amount of films, or it could be a med tech, right? If you go over to somebody who has a fund and you don't study that they have $100 million, but they don't want to have $1 million investments. They want to have they want to have $10 million investments. They're in and out of it 3 years to 5 years, or 7 years to 9 years. You knew their criteria. A lot of people are so eager to want money that they're not asking, what is the other person on the other side of the table? Do you want a return on your capital? Do you want to know that you invested in a really amazing project that is going to hopefully change lives? Is your significant other somebody trying to get into the business and you want them to learn simultaneously? While they may make a profit, but you don't want to start an entire new business, right? Do you think it's part of your portfolio, their portfolio that will add to it? If there's just hard money lenders, there's not that much value in it, because often the companies that are acquired or taken over, a lot of times, and today it's extremely dangerous, they're acquired because it was somebody who went bad on a loan, or bad on they defaulted on a deliverable. There's actually if we all know Wall Street, the kind of blue horseshoe love, whatever the case is, I'm actually seeing this with a lot of founders, and I'm upset about seeing this. There's companies that say stuff like, hey, you're doing $20 million in business. That means you are great EBITDA, $4 million EBITDA. I'm going to give you 10 times that, $40 million. I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. Now, let me explain something to you. Look how great we do in customer acquisition. We're going to roll your company in that because we're going to be able to buy ads at 50 cents on the dollar. You're doing 20 million. No problem. Even if you go to 18, no problem. But we don't know. You may be crazy. If you go to 15 or 14, we got to watch ourselves, because we're going to give you a deposit on it. They screw up the advertising, make you go down to 10 because you never thought you'd go down to 14, and then they take the company on purpose. There's some bad people in the world. I told Kevin O'Leary to stop doing this, but he will not listen to me. I'm joking.
Well,
so you got to understand what is the need for capital. And I know that gets a little foggy, but we've all seen people who said they had bad deals because they were so busy with a passion, just wanting to get their dream out there, wanting to change people's lives. They knew it was powerful, but they didn't take time to actually really look at the numbers and the details. All right, so now let's go into, where do you look for it? I mean, that's a really vast question on like where are you going to add value to somebody? That's the biggest question. I think I probably have to ask you that. Networks that are buying or not. I mean, I don't know that world. I told you it's fascinating to me. I have no idea like how these people in this room actually go ahead and live. I have such an admiration for people who are storytellers, who have been career storytellers, and they make a living. I mean, I can't even. I just don't even understand it.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue for you to finish that question and also bring up Emil, who is a fantastic storyteller.
Yes.
And excellent at this topic of raising capital, finding the perfect partners, and actually working with Daymond. So for a second, let's see what Emil has worked on in the past. So now we'll bring Emil Pinnock, filmmaker, up to the stage.
Thank you. SeriesFest, what up? See my people right here, man. Good to see everybody.
So Emil really dominated SeriesFest Season 3, 2017. I mean, you saw a clip of his film Up North. And I often say that Emil has this special kind of fairy dust that he sprinkles with everyone who's around him. I believe that's how he met Daymond. It's definitely how we met. It's how he continues to work with storytellers today and people in the community. Emil gives back so much, especially in this game of storytelling. But as we were just speaking about capital and how you get your projects made, tell me a little bit about how you two met and how you got here.
So I came to SeriesFest Season 3. A little bit of my backstory. Previously, before coming to SeriesFest, I was arrested in Harlem, New York, on my 19th birthday for a crime that I didn't commit, the possession of 2 firearms. And I was sent to Rikers Island and Queens Detention Center, which is one of the worst jails in the nation, where I was left to fight for my innocence. Fortunately for me, I was able to be acquitted with my 5 friends and given our freedom back. However, that isn't the case for most young black and brown men in our nation. And so when I got my freedom, I felt like this responsibility to tell this story, not only to tell my story, but to tell the story of what's happening to that community. And so I embarked on trying to do that through the entertainment industry. Every door was closed on me. Nobody wanted to read my script. The one company that was interested in it wanted to buy the rights but didn't want me to participate in any of the creative process, let alone write, direct, or produce. They didn't even want me to be in the writer's room to tell them how to tell the story authentically. And so I decided that I was going to raise the money myself independently. I mean, at that time, you got to think about it. I didn't have any experience as a filmmaker. I don't have a college degree. I never graduated high school. So if you look at it on paper, I didn't have the credentials or the qualifications to be able to do that. But my mother always used to say, when she saw I was young and had like this interest in entrepreneurship, she would always tell me about these 4 kids from Southside Jamaica, Queens, who created this brand called FUBU. In our communities, if you want to be a rapper, you put a poster of Jay-Z or Biggie Smalls on your wall. If you want to hoop, it's Michael Jordan. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, you looked up to these 4 guys. And so I had actually a poster of the 4 FUBU guys on my wall. And so when I was trying to get this money, my mom reminded me, like, you could be the next Daymond John. Remember Daymond John's story. And because him and his mother had like this relationship in his process of entrepreneurship, we shared that as well. And so she was also my first guide and first encouragement to do that. And she often would remind me about the success that Daymond had gotten from where he came from. And so I embarked on that journey, empowered by his story, raised $500,000 of my own money independently, made my project. I actually shot it in the same unit that I was housed in the same prison that I was in, because of the relationships I have. That's once again the art of the barter. I was able to do that for free. And then I came to SeriesFest and won all those awards and launched my career. Through that, somebody asked me at SeriesFest, actually an agent who is still now a board member at SeriesFest, how did you do it? And I told him that story. And he just looked at me as I was glowingly talking about Daymond John, and he smiles and says to me, we also represent Daymond John. And he calls Daymond. So that was it.
Yes, we can clap for that. I mean, I hope you see, this is exactly what Daymond was talking about, and you could feel the energy from Emil. It's the art of the barter and getting where you need to go, really paying attention to what your story is and how to get it out there, and telling it constantly. And by telling it, that got him an intro to Daymond. Yes.
Absolutely. I remember the first time they called him on FaceTime, because I'm looking at this dude, I'm like, he don't know no Daymond John. Like, because then he pulled up the phone and he had the name saved. Once I seen the name, I'm like, all right, cool. He might, but let me see it. And then he FaceTimed him. Then he's like telling him. And Daymond said he was busy, but he said, hey, I appreciate you reaching out, telling the story. And then he was like, I'll be in LA in 2 weeks. Meet me at Soho House. And I was like, were you serious? I went home. I told everybody, I'm like, yo, I'm about to get crazy. So I'm getting my outfit ready for 2 weeks. I'm like, I told everybody that I could possibly tell. And I was like, I just couldn't believe it. And it wasn't until I walked in Soho House and I actually saw him sitting there that I actually believed that I was actually even going to be able to meet him.
So before we talk about how you came in, Daymond, what made you give him the intro to come and talk to you?
I resonated with the concept. When I grew up, very similar. 86 devastated all of our communities, and it's about goal setting. I was on tour. I was on the first tour. I was a roadie on Run DMC, and it was the first national tour, right? Run DMC, Fat Boys, LL Cool J, I think Big Daddy Kane, Public Enemy, wow. Eric B. and Rakim. And it was 4 of us who were roadies, just pushing around speakers. It was me, and I said, oh, I'm gonna be the biggest guy in fashion. Another guy said, yeah, I'm gonna be the biggest DJ ever. Another kid said, he was a writer of graffiti. He was writing graffiti at the time, but he was an intern at a guy named Ralph McDaniel's company. He was like, I'm gonna start telling stories. And another guy with us was like, I'm gonna be the biggest drug dealer. Well, we all hit, I guess, the heights, because that was me. I obviously created FUBU. Other guy who was going to be the DJ was Irv Gotti from Murder, Inc. The other guy who wanted to tell stories is Hype Williams. And the other guy who was a drug dealer, Hype Williams, made the movie Belly about. However, my friend who we grew up with 6 years old, Belly, he went to jail for something that he never did. He was with me the night that somebody said he killed somebody. He never did. He just came home 2 years ago. Wow. But I have about 4 friends who happen to be in the same situation. 3 of them got exonerated from great projects like the Innocent Project, where people pick them up, professors. So I resonated with him, with his story, with this world of injustice, but the ability to tell the story. I had went to New York Film Academy only for like 6 months to understand a little bit about the concept of directing, but not for probably the reason that anybody here went. I went for another reason, I went because every time I did most of the product placement in music artist videos for rap videos from 97 to 2004, 300 videos to TV shows a year, whether it's my product or somebody else's. So I really went to understand the ability to shoot, because if I was on a set in that time, remember, a video wasn't on a phone, right? I would have to wait 90 days. I'm paying $10,000, $20,000 for this thing to be in there. I got to tell them when they move in a camera, I need to know, is that a half an hour, 2 hours? When they're shooting in slow-mo, or what type of lens? Of course, they're going to go wide, medium, close, slow-mo. I needed to know what it was and sit there to the director and go, I'm not paying you for this shot. Because I wouldn't see it until 90 days later. So I started to understand those type of things and investing in that part of the craft. Now I knew how to send people down. I knew what to tell people about the key lights and the filters and the continuity and everything I need to know so that I can secure my investment. I know I'm getting off track, but you know when that would pay a price, and it would just pay so much to me, because when I got called from a show called Shark Tank in 2008, well, Mark Cuban already knew cameras. Barbara was already on NBC, the morning show. Lori was doing QVC. Kevin and Robert were already on Dragon's Den. There was 5 other people there, but I knew how to work a camera and position myself during that sizzle reel purely because something that I had picked up 10 years earlier. So again, I think we're going off a little bit, but I'm telling you the full story, I guess, on how these things have come around from that side, for hopefully people can pick up some of the investments I made earlier on in my life, and I would always do that.
So like the bartering, it's not just monetary investments. Sometimes you have to put in the time, you have to spend the time to build the creativity, all of that, and it comes full circle.
You have to put it in today, every day. I'm still studying today. I'm studying digital platforms today, and I have 4 digital companies that I own. I'm studying AI. I'm studying today. I'm not waiting for somebody, because then if I become successful in it, just like every storyteller here, why aren't you studying other aspects of the business? Because then all of a sudden, when I hire somebody, well, if they do a sucky job, I know they're doing a sucky job. I know they're robbing me, right? Or if they can't hold me hostage to the business because I know the basic fundamentals of it. Or if they're doing a great job, you know what I say? Let me give you double, you run this so I can go work on something else. I got to know the fundamentals of all the aspects of the business.
So back to the story where Emil and his story resonates with you. Emil, you come into the restaurant. How do you show up?
Go ahead, man. Tell him. Tell him what happened.
I mean, I showed up with just a bunch of people. Like I was,
and a bunch of how many is a bunch?
It's probably like what, six or 8 of us, man.
Okay.
Like,
and who are they? Your bodyguards?
Nah,
your
it was
makeup
guys that I
artists?
was. It was guys that I was working with at the time. I had been creating projects with and different things like that. But obviously, Daymond invited me, and then when I go in there, he's looking at me like, "Yo, what you came in here with the entourage?" So I'm like, man, you know. So that was a real funny moment.
Well, tell him the whole story. The whole story is, we don't know what we don't know. When I've been there too, and I'll tell you, you know, I don't want to take up too much time, but he came in there and I was like, all right, order what you want. He was like, order what we want. Yo, I'm gonna take 2 burgers over here. Yo, you got lobster. Yo, what's up, man? You want a milkshake? They started ordering all kind of shit. Now, I appreciate it because we're going to all be at that step of our lives. My version of that, I was in Colorado, I think 2000-something. Oh, I was here. Actually, I'm in Colorado. I was here at a big mansion, big event. I'm in the middle of a hip-hop battle with all these rappers. I'm just trying to dress everybody, East Coast, West Coast. I got a big bodyguard. I'm in the corner. Not Elon Musk, though. Bezos, Buffett, and Bill Gates, Dell, they're all over there. Nobody's speaking to me. I got the big bodyguard. I got the fat dookie chain over here. And obviously, they're not serving Alizé and Hennessy, so this place is trash. No Gucci belts. I don't talk to anybody in that room because as an entrepreneur, the idea of being this tough person, you're supposed to be vulnerable. You're supposed to walk in the room and tell that story to everybody and say, hey, I know all about this, but if I don't know about that, can you help me? And how can I be of value to you? And we can create something together. I didn't talk to any of them. Think about if I would have met those. I ended up meeting most of those men. I ended up meeting years later. But if I had met them in 2001, 2020, when I was in that room, Mark Cuban would be scraping the gum off the bottom of my shoes right now. You realize the opportunity that I lost? Because I wasn't ready like him to be able to tell that story to everybody. I thought I was too cool.
So what made you ready, Emil? At the drop of the hat.
When you say ready, you mean?
Ready to tell the story to anyone, to the right people, finding the right people, telling the story in a way that it resonates. Because it resonates with Daymond, and he told us why.
Yeah.
But your story resonates with so many people.
I mean, I just, sometimes you just have an opportunity where you just feel like that's your purpose. Like, and like nothing is gonna stop you once you feel like you're purpose driven. And so coming from out of that system and knowing that I was leaving a lot of guys, I remember the day that I was leaving, I had spent about 2 minutes considering going back and stabbing somebody so that I could stay, because I didn't want to leave the group of guys that I had stayed there. Like this is my fraternity. This is my army. This is my group. We're here fighting together and being a leader, and definitely a vocal leader there. Like I felt like I was leaving them. I was letting them down. And so it was one of my guys that was there. He actually ends up inside the pilot. He was like, yo, you got to go out and live for us. And so, having a passion, like I think connecting that to storytelling is like, find something that you feel passionate about, that's your purpose to tell that story. I mean, we could all come by different things, and there's gimmicks and there's all these things that people will watch, but like if you have a purpose-driven story, I think that once you have that, nothing can stop you to tell that story. And so I knew that I had that purpose. And coming to SeriesFest, that first year when I was here, we had a full packed theater, and I think like less than 2 or 3% of the people in there were like African American. So when I made my show, I was like, my community is going to understand this. I knew that black people were going to understand this, but like seeing a predominantly white audience stand up and give me a standing ovation that year let me know that I was telling a story that the world wanted to hear. And there was a woman who stood up, I'm not sure if you remember, she said that she had walked in to our screening a racist. She was like, I literally had walked in here a racist because I had identified every African American who has gone through this stuff as guilty, and I'd always saw African American men in this particular light. And this series has actually changed my heart. And that was that moment that I'm like, I'm armed with that. I see the change that I could actually make. I saw that there was a long journey, but I knew that was my job to do that, and so nothing was gonna stop me.
Wow. Powerful. Powerful. So Daymond, Emil walks in with his purpose and his purpose-driven entourage.
Well, let me say something about that. First of all, I didn't know that 6 years later I would still be talking to this dude. So I'm thinking like this is my last. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, yo, we got to go. And we need our story. So our story was going to be like, yo, bro, that's crazy. We went down to Soho House. Yo, we ordered the lobster. We did this. We didn't really necessarily know that. So that when he offered that. However, there was some strategy behind that. And I want to be clear on that, because one of the things, and thinking about when you have the opportunity, you have to be ready to tell your story. And one of the things that I didn't have the a package or a pitch deck or all those things, but I did know Daymond's story. And I did know what he responded to, and what his prior experience was his group of friends, and I wanted him to see that in me. I wanted him to see me as a Daymond of that particular group, and I wanted him to see that I had taken what I had learned from him and put it into these different people, like the position that I was in, how valuable I was to that particular group, the leadership skills that I had. And so what I came there to do with that group, besides eat, was to showcase to him how I had actually used the information that I had learned from him and Keith and Colin in that particular group. And I was hoping that he actually could see that. And later on, having talked to him and started to build a relationship, I think that actually did work.
As you can see with the head nod, it did. So as we wrap this up, we have about 4 minutes left. I don't want to leave you all hanging with the question about the funding and the investors and the pitch deck. So you just mentioned that you didn't have a pitch deck. You also mentioned earlier that you raised $500,000 on your own.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it goes back to Daymond says is like, you got to know who you're talking to. You got to know who not to pitch to. And so the gentleman who eventually gave me the majority of that money, his name is Louis Ariola. I had found out that he had grown his company to like multi-million, like it's like $60 or $70 million valuation at that particular time. But his niece had told me that he was formerly incarcerated, and that he had like this response. He always had wanted to like try to help out and do something, but he had never really had the ability to reach back. You know when you want to do something, but sometimes you don't know how. And so she would speak to like, yeah, he wants to do this, but like his life has moved so past that he's no longer connected to that former life, right? But like when we speak about it, you can hear that. And for me, I was like, okay, cool, this is my person. He had never invested in film before. He had never invested anything in entertainment. And so she said, look, I'm gonna invite you over to one day to have a dinner, and after that dinner, you better say what you say, because he was like, he didn't want anybody to come over and formally pitch him. So like it was like a dinner that turned into a pitch, and then I started to speak to him, and he was like, you know what, man, I'll think about it. And then right there, I just was like, man, I would appreciate if you told me right now. Like, I want to know the answer now. I would love it if I could like know it now so I can answer your concerns. What more concerns do you have? And then he just started laughing. He was just like, yo, you're really not going to let me leave here. Like, you know, so it started to be a joke within the family. And then he said, I'm traveling out the country and tomorrow, and I won't be back for 3 months. So I don't have time to give you paperwork and do all these different things. So I'm going to have to lead in trust. So tomorrow you're going to have $500,000 in your account. And when I get back in 3 months, we'll do the paperwork. But go ahead and tell your story, because he had an actual connection. So that whole night, y'all ever been like refreshing your account to see if something was going to come in? Me and my wife was on double duty. I'm like, you stay up from 12 to 4. I'm going to check the account from 4 to 8. And then it was on the second shift about I remember the time. It was 7:14. She woke me up. She was like, yo, it's in there. It's like, and that was the beginning of it.
Very, very good story. Very good story. All right. So you all see how the passion and the purpose came all around. He had no fear asking for what he needed because he knew that this had to happen. So we're going to take 8 minutes or so. No? Okay. No time for questions. So I hope you enjoyed. I think there were quite a few gems here that you can take back and apply to your projects. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Doni.
Thank you.